What's going on, guys? It's Mike. Welcome back. And today I want to talk a little bit about a video that Rossmann put out just a few days ago. It's about Ford Motor Company and some audio technology that they have submitted to the patent office. Ford seems to be trying to patent the ability to analyze audio data from within the automobile's cabin. And Rossmann does a great job on this video. There's a couple things I think he doesn't address. I don't want to say he missed them, but he doesn't address, I think are critical. I want to talk about those. Lou also provides some solutions, or a solution he thinks, or a response. I think his solution's fine, but I think there's more that needs to be talked about and more that we can do. Okay, so long and short of it, Lou's saying, hey, look, you could imagine that Ford is saying we want to analyze the audio. Meaning, what do you listen to? When do you jump off this track? What kind of podcast do you like? When do you click off? When do you stay long? When are you paying attention? And that gives them kind of a better understanding of how to deliver a better user experience. And he's 100% right here. He's saying, look, that's not what they're doing. They want to listen to everything. Sure, they're going to pay attention to how you behave, listening to your content, but they're going to be listening to conversations. If you're in the cabin of your car and you have a passenger and you're talking, Ford's patenting technology that allows them to dissect what you're saying, understand it, and then use that data gathering to deliver advertising. That they're going to sit and listen to what you talk about, what you care about, your conversations, the things you're interested in, so that while you're driving, Ford can then deliver ads. Your car has a microphone, your car has speakers. This is a way that Ford can connect these things and then make more money. You don't just make money selling the car, ladies and gentlemen. You got to keep squeezing the nickels and dimes out of your customers every freaking moment that they have breath. And this is a way to let Ford further monetize their loyal fans, their drivers. Now, my video about Adobe, I got some flack for saying I'm sick and tired of the cars driving for us. I'm sick and tired of the cars turning on and turning off to supposedly save the environment and letting me know when I get too close to a line. I'm saying, hey, the user is being usurped here. I'm the one who bought the car. I'm the one who's driving it. I don't need it doing everything for me. I want to drive the car. I want to have control. And to me, this is, and I got criticism for that. A number of people said, hey, Mike, I agree with you 100%. You people, you know what time it is. But a lot of people were just outraged that, oh, you're anti-environmentalist and you're, like a conspiracy theorist and you're a knucklehead. Whatever, dude. Get ready to be the gerbil in the cage, because that's where this is all going. So essentially what Ford is saying is you're not the customer. If they're going to analyze your data and they're going to start selling your information to advertisers and then running ads to you, whether through their own network or just selling the data so that advertisers can run ads other places, you are the product. You're not the customer anymore. The customer is the advertiser. You're talking about lunch with your bestie as you're driving around, you're saying you're hungry, and all of a sudden over your loudspeakers comes an ad for Hellmann's mayonnaise. My friend, we have a problem. So Rossmann's pushback on this is say, hey, here's what you got to do. Don't only punish Ford. Start blocking ads. Make these advertisers pay. Make it impossible for them to advertise to you. Block ads everywhere. Get off of the Google network. Block everything. Don't accept ads into your life. And I feel like, okay, that's not a bad approach. However, I think this misses a little bit here. I'm not saying, and I'm being careful because I don't want to draw the ire of Rossmann. And I have a lot of respect. I'm a subscriber to his channel. A lot of respect for what he does. And quite frankly, where would we be without a guy like Lou and other people like him that are willing to fight these kinds of fights? But I think there's more to it. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on here. Like I said before, I talked about in my Adobe video how I don't like this encroachment of the state into my daily experience. And one of those was driving. I got a lot of criticism for that. However, it doesn't take much to kind of connect the dots here. You could easily see that not only is the car listening to me to analyze what my consumer preferences are, it's going to analyze my political preferences, my ideologies. It's going to analyze my behaviors. You start to see this kind of future state where you have precognition. What was that Tom Cruise movie? I can't remember it now. It sucks so bad. But it was essentially like everything is watching you and you get arrested for crimes that you're about to commit because the algorithms can figure out, the AI, the algorithms, whatever, can figure out when you're about to do something wrong based on all the data it's gathering about you. I wish I could remember it. I'll flash it on the screen here. But we are moving to that place. Now, you can say, well, Mike, you're being a conspiracy theorist. But one thing you've got to come to terms with as a citizen of your nation, especially if you live in the US or somewhere in the West, as well as a consumer, someone that buys products and so on, you have to come to terms with a dynamic in our society called corporatism. Now, people hear corporatism and they think that means a world controlled by giant corporations. It's like, no. Corporatism is the melding, it's the bringing together of giant corporations and the state. And the way that this happens and why it happens is giant corporations want to make money. They want to make billions, and they're not guided by any deeper philosophical truth. They don't have a view of the human being as valuable. They don't think of anything as sacred or good. What's good is making money, and that's it. And I'm all about making money. Somebody accused me like, oh, you're an anti-capitalist, you're a communist. It's like, no, I believe in private industry. I believe in wealth creation, all that kind of stuff. But you got to be a knucklehead if you think that capitalism has not run amok, ladies and gentlemen. And so you have a corporatist society where the giant corporations and the state are working together. The reason they do this is because corporations want to make money, and the state more and more, as it gets control over societies, it gets involved in more aspects of society, when it gets involved in all the education, all the healthcare, all those kinds of things, it has more money. It starts taxing more, bringing more in. It becomes the place where you make money. And so these corporations say, look, I'm going to play ball with the state. If I play ball with the state, it will give me preference. I'll get contracts. I'll get opportunities. I will get things that other companies don't because I'm playing ball. So what they do is they say, I will start implementing all these programs, interests, initiatives that the state wants to implement. If you don't believe me, if you say I'm overreacting, just look at two things in social media. When Elon Musk took over Twitter, now X, it was uncovered. I mean, you can't argue with it that the CIA and then maybe the FBI, but American federal agencies were tightly integrated. They actually had people on staff, on site, like multiple people controlling the narrative on that social media platform. This was exposed. And the government was essentially subsidizing Jack Dorsey's Twitter. Everyone's over there going, oh, Twitter, it's great. And when Elon takes it, he's going to break it. He didn't necessarily break it. And I'm not defending Elon, but you got to think a little bit past the headlines, ladies and gentlemen. You got to think a little bit for yourself. What does it mean when the government is integrated into supposedly a public messaging platform? It was a scandal. I mean, it's kind of come and gone. Nobody pays attention to it, but that's scandalous. And quite frankly, it's anti-constitutional, it's unconstitutional, it's illegal, etc. And then fast forward to just a few days ago, about a week or two ago, I'll say young Mark Zuckerberg, he's actually getting older now, came out and said, yeah, look, in some of the previous elections, we tilted the scale. We put our finger on the scale. We suppressed certain kinds of messages for certain kinds of candidates, certain orange people. And then we elevated other candidates to try to help deliver a victory to one side versus the other. And, essentially he's saying mea culpa, and we're not going to do that this time around. Well, that's kind of a mouthful. Now, you could say, well, Zuckerberg's just doing this out of the goodness of his heart. He wanted to help on one side. Now he's changed his mind. He's going to just take his hands off the wheel and let it go where it goes. That's possible. But, Zuckerberg was in and out of congressional hearings all the time. They were twisting the screws on him. They were putting the heat on him and his company, and rightfully so, collecting tons of data. I mean, I'm not over here saying Meta good, Zuckerberg hero, Elon Musk hero. I'm not saying that. But I'm using these two things as examples to say the state is intimately involved in the consumer world that you and I are interacting with. And we're going on thinking that, no, that's not the case. But these giant corporations are working very closely with the state to achieve the ends of the state, and in return, these corporations get preference. They get government contracts. You look at COVID. When COVID hit, all kinds of businesses had to shut down, but often the giant corporations were allowed to stay open. How is it that you could not go to the mom and pop hardware store down the street, the privately owned one, but you could go to Walmart and get what you needed? Now you can go, Mike, if you are reacting to what I'm saying, I'm not trying to propagandize here. I'm just painting the picture of one way to see reality in front of us. And if you're finding yourself reacting and getting upset about that, you might want to step back for a minute and ask yourself, why am I angry about this? Why does this upset me so much? All I'm doing is putting what actually happened on the table. You can get angry about it, but if you're angry, I would look in the mirror. Feel free, get down in those comments and be a warrior, but I'd look in the mirror for a moment. Not because you're on the left or the right, but because you're not necessarily being intellectually honest. So giant corporations work with the state. That is corporatism. And when their interests align, there's no check and balance. You get the imposition of the state and its values upon the American consumer and the American worker, because a giant percentage of us work for companies that are, like over 20, I forget the number, it's like 28%, 27% of employees work for companies of 10,000 or more employees. Well, those are companies that are implementing social programs, things like you got to celebrate Pride Month, you got to do the Black Lives Matter thing. And I know these are sensitive topics, not going to make me easily monetized, but the point being these giant corporations implement state programs. That is corporatism. And so when you look at this patented technology where Ford can listen to the audio, the conversations, everything happening within the car due to the microphones, and this is not just for advertising. If you are starting to talk about things that go outside of what the state wants, you could be penalized. This is where we get into things like social credit scores like you see in China. What could those penalties be? I mean, are they going to shut the car off right in the middle of the road because you talked about voting for the other guy? Probably not. But do you really want Ford Motor Company knowing your political preferences? And do you want that data being fed out and sold to people? And by the way, when we talk about selling it, you go, oh, well, they're not going to give it to the federal government. Well, how about now? We're in political season here in the U.S. You've got the Republican Party and the Democrat Party with tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars at their disposal. You don't think they're buying that data if they can? You don't think they're buying consumer data? You don't think they want to know about consumer preferences? Do you want your party knowing all your preferences, all your conversations, all your thoughts? Do you want your opposing party to know those things too? And worst case scenario is the state, whoever has power, the IRS. What if the IRS makes some type of ruling that they're allowed, somehow that gets past Congress, they're allowed to have access to this data because it's important that you pay your taxes, and it's illegal for you to even talk about not paying your taxes, and if you're trying to get out of it, I mean, it just gets to a point where it's out of control. You have no agency. You have no control over your own life. You have no privacy because all you're trying to do is drive down the road. By the way, add to it, Transportation Secretary Buttigieg, Uncle Pete, Buddy Pete, they came out with I don't know, it was a 5 or 10 year plan about how they wanted to make transportation more equitable, and they wanted to eliminate systemic racism and biases in the whole transportation system, et cetera. What does that even mean? You're not allowed to drive on the road unless you've got the right stance on race, on sexuality. I mean, this is getting out of control. Now, this is not the end of the world. And if you buy a new car, fine. They're not going to come and arrest you in your sleep necessarily. But my point is, do we even want to open the door to this? This is like the big bad wolf saying, let me in. Little pig, let me in. Do we even want to open the door? Do we even want to come to the window? Do we even want to consider the request to let the wolf in? Because this is letting the wolf in. The wolf will promise that it doesn't want anything bad. It promises that it's actually going to help you. It promises that you won't harm, hurt, maim, kill you. But in the end, the wolf does what the wolf does because the wolf is a wolf. This is why the founders of our country knew that you had to have checks and balances in the state. You couldn't just let the state do whatever it wants. It needs to be reined in, and there need to be checks and balances. And so this technology is rather concerning on the one hand, like Lewis is saying, like, hey, as a consumer, do you really want to be advertised to all the time? He's 100% right. However, it's even more concerning than I think he calls out, because we are in a corporatist state. We're in a corporatist economy. We are in a corporatist economy. And giant corporations are hewing to the desires of the state, and car makers are giant corporations. And so to me, this is the problem. Not only are we losing agency in our ability to just drive how we want to drive and not have the car shut off and have a little peace and quiet without the car beeping, chirping, and the wheel vibrating if you just go outside of the norm in one little way or another. So we have this corporatist state. We have the state and big corporations like auto manufacturers working together, and you and I are losing agency. And so I'm concerned about this. Now, Lewis, he makes the argument that what we need to do is to start blocking ads. Block the advertisers everywhere you can. That'll teach them. I think that's a great first step. But I think you have to take the political piece into consideration when you're looking at this bigger situation. And it can feel overwhelming. And I'm just going to wrap up with this thought. You can essentially say, well, I'm going to vote for this presidential candidate and that's going to fix everything. It doesn't. You can't. Vote for the person you think is the best. Make your devil's pact, or, choose your Messiah, however you tend to see it. I'm a little bit more cynical. I'm going to cast my vote, but quite frankly, I'm not in love with either of them, but I know one is way better than the other as far as the long shot. And so I'm going to go that route. But there's one piece of politics that people tend to just ignore, to overlook, and that is local politics. The best way to push back against an encroaching state, and this is one of the beauties of the American political system, is to start going down layers. Get involved in your state politics. Sending people to the state legislature, the state assembly, that can actually be quite powerful. It may seem like, oh yeah, I don't even know who my state legislator is. Well, that's important. I'm not talking about, yes, elect your presidents, elect your senators and your Congress people. That's all critical. But start paying attention to your state level politics. Because if you can elect and get good people in, or you can become one of those people at the state level, those people then start appointing positions of other state level bureaucrats, officials, etc. They start making policies, and they can actually push back against an encroaching federal government. You want to be in a strong, healthy state, one with a strong, healthy government that reflects the values of your state. It isn't just towing the line like rah, rah, progressivism, rah, rah, Trump, but they're just saying, hey, look, this is what the people, I'm in South Carolina, this is what the people of South Carolina care about. We're going to make laws that protect them, to protect their agency, to protect their ability to navigate. We're going to look out for our people in the way that we know best how to do. We're not going to just hand that off to some giant, administrative department up in Washington, D.C. We're going to push back. Another level is to get involved in your county level or your city level. There are so many opportunities for you and I to get involved at lower levels. And when we strengthen those lower levels, think of them as grassroots, think of them as more local, think of them as more regional, as you and I help strengthen those things, we have this infrastructure and these institutions that are now strong enough to resist this encroaching power that doesn't allow for the abuse of economic, political, legal power from either corporations or an encroaching federal government. The other thing that you can do is do everything you can to support private businesses. Start a private business if you are so inclined. And if you're not, support your local businesses. Do business with them, pay them, buy their products. Give them a little bit more margin. Well, I can get it cheaper if yeah, okay. And I understand sometimes you got to shop on price. I get it. You can't afford like premium beef from the little boutique beefery, the little, cattle ranch down the street. I get it. Not everybody can afford bougie food. I get it. However, there are all kinds of ways that you and I can be supporting local, regional, and privately owned businesses. They don't have to be local, just privately owned companies. This again strips power out from the giant corporations. And then I would add, which is along the lines of what Lewis was saying, let's start boycotting these companies. Let's make them pay. Block the ads, that's fine, but let's boycott. Let's make it loud and proud. Let's let them know. If Hellmann's mayonnaise, and I'm picking on Hellmann's, I don't know why. I don't even know. It's probably a Kraft company. I don't know who owns Hellmann's. But if they're on there like pushing ads through some speakers on a car while I'm driving around, let's make them pay. Let's make it public. That's what folks used to do in the 70s and 80s. They would do public boycotts. That's some of the stuff that's happened to some of these DEI initiatives like John Deere, who has repented, Harley Davidson, who are doing a lot of DEI nonsense. And their customers said, what are you doing? This goes against me. Like, you're making me the evil monster and I'm the one that you depend on for your living. No, we're not doing this. We're not doing this. I'm out. And then, the DEI giant corporation like John Deere or Harley Davidson was like, well, hang on a second. Whoa. Let's not get carried away. We'll make some changes here. That DEI, we're just kicking the tires on that thing. We weren't serious. We're just kicking the tires. We're required by law to at least give it the sniff test. But don't worry, we're just like you. We're just good old boys making tractors and motorcycles. You and I have power, and I think that's part of Lewis's point. I just want to draw out the fact that there's a whole political layer to this, and we've got to start holding these companies accountable. We've got to start rooting out federal and state level government when they get involved in areas that they are not constitutionally allowed to. And you know what? I'm not against regulations and laws that make sense for protecting human life. And so if these things are dehumanizing us, if they're making our environment, and I talk about environment meaning, our physical environment, but the environment of the human being, the day-to-day life. When you're in the cabin of your car, that's part of your environment. They're making the environment dehumanized and cluttered with just nonstop corporatist advertising and social programming. We got to push back and make some laws around that kind of stuff. And the best way to get at that is to get involved in your city, your county, and your state level government and start supporting, pushing, electing great people that get this, that are willing to fight the fight. And I think that's a pathway forward. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not a slam dunk. It's going to be a little bit at a time. But to me, this is one of the ways that we can push back. You add to that the economic power of boycotts, and like Lewis said, blocking ads and getting out of these systems, these advertising networks. I think we've got a shot. So guys, that's my take on it. We'd love to know what you think. By the way, if you like this kind of content and you care about private industry, private business, maybe you care about it, maybe you want to start one, maybe you've got yourself a little small business there and you want some help, sign up for my newsletter. It's free, link down in the description below. And most of all, don't forget, Uncle Mike loves each and every one of you. Thanks for your time. I'll catch you all in the next video. Cheers.